I love metroidvanias. I've even done videos on some of them. A lot of my favorites are usually also liked by most people, but there is one exception. I'm Sam the Ashen, and this is Death's Gambit. I have to say, I have a soft spot in my heart for this game because it's one of the first real metroidvanias that I played. I know I got into the genre a little late. I know that a lot of people have a lot of problems with this game, but even with those problems, this game still has a ton to offer. Also, just to clarify, I will be talking about the Afterlife version update, because that is the only one that I've played. The game is made with a pixel art style, and I was really hooked in by the environments and designs right from the beginning. It seems like the world is set in a medieval time, but a lot of the architecture that you run into is futuristic and maybe even dystopian. So really, the world has a bit of everything in between the two. It also has magic, science fiction, and fantasy all rolled together. It might sound like too much, but I love the variety in environments and enemies between all the different themes of the game. You start off by picking your class, which determines your starting weapon and your skill tree. Soon after getting going, you'll have to fight some enemies. There's several combat styles between magic, sword and shield, rogue with dagger, and maybe a couple more. Most of my playtime has been with sword and shield, which was my favorite. There's some things to consider when fighting, like weapon reach, stagger and enemy poise, and enemy movesets. Perfect blocking seems to be really powerful, so that was something I used a lot throughout my playthrough. But any of these classes and playstyles are viable, and although you're locked into your class as far as I know, you do get to pick a second class at some point to make hybrid builds, which is really cool. I know there's some debate on whether or not this is a Soulslike, and I would say it is, at least in some ways. The three big things for me were the combat, which seemed to be slower and rewarding knowing the enemy movesets, the core attributes that are leveled up with currency from defeating enemies, and a checkpoint system that respawns enemies when you rest at it. That was enough for me to consider it a Souls-like. It even has what I think is a little reference to the invisible platforms in the crystal caverns of Seath. I'm also a sucker for the level up system, on top of the class perks with skills and passives. It might seem small, but I like the feeling of earning XP or currency to manually level up certain stats to fit the build that I want to play. I would say overall, combat-wise, it's a pretty difficult game. Some people are probably going to breeze through it, but I found it to be an enjoyable challenge. The boss fights overall are a lot of fun. Some of them have unique mechanics that you need to learn and take advantage of, and some of them are just normal boss fights that you have to try to learn the movesets of the boss and play skillfully to defeat them. Most, if not every boss, has a heroic boss version of themselves that shows up after you beat the original boss, and this is a higher level boss fight that you're supposed to do a little bit later on after you've leveled up and gotten stronger. Also, most of them offer unique rewards, and the fight itself changes a little bit too. The boss either usually gets a new move or special ability to make the fight a little bit tougher on you. I know in a ton of games, there's usually some bosses that I really enjoy, so in Death's Gambit, I'm glad that if I do like a boss, I can go back and fight it pretty much anytime I want, and I still get rewarded for the currency to level up when fighting them. Exploration is a pretty massive part of the game, and I think it's also a part of what some people have a problem with. Although there is a good amount of platforming, it seems to be secondary to the combat because the platforming itself is pretty simple. There are plenty of areas that are locked behind having a certain skill like a double jump or an air dash, and those are usually locked behind bosses. There's plenty of optional twists and turns throughout exploring, and usually it's either the way forward or there's a reward to find. I really enjoyed that aspect. I really don't like when games have side paths that don't lead to anything. You do start the game off with a map from the very beginning, which helps give you an idea of where to go, but I found myself getting lost in this game way more than I probably should have. I thought for a while it was just me because I tend to get lost in pretty much every Metroidvania, but apparently this is a fairly common complaint. I don't exactly know how to explain it because with a map and some generalized quest markers, it should be pretty hard to get lost. But there's so many locked doors and gated ways forward that I spent more time backtracking than probably anything else, which is my one major complaint of the game. But this won't happen to everybody, especially if you are experienced with Metroidvanias. I know it only counts for so much, but the game really does have a lot of charm, and this usually comes in the form of a side character or even a throwaway character that just adds a little bit of life to the game. The charm also comes in the form of the environments, whether it's the overgrown ruins or long forgotten battlefields or icy caverns or mountaintops, futuristic underground laboratories, or even the hub area of the game, Sanctuary. It all adds a lot of character and charm to the world. Even Fruppy's restaurant, a really nice little diner that doesn't really serve a major purpose, but it does add to the charm and the world building of Death's Gambit. Although it's kind of a point of contention, there is a story in this game. You're a fallen soldier resurrected by death, and now he wants a deal. You, on the other hand, are in search of your mother, who disappeared on her last expedition to the capital. There's nothing too groundbreaking for most of the story, but in my opinion, it works well, not necessarily because of the story, more so because of the characters and the written dialogue. I enjoyed most of it. There's a lot of good characters here, ranging from a strong, honorable warrior who you meet at certain points throughout the game, who gives you some criticism for leaning too much on your immortality, and says you wouldn't be half the warrior if you only had one life like him. Or a mysterious knight that you meet several times throughout the game, and although she does get in your way, she seems to be well-intentioned. There's also the character of Death itself, who is way more casual than most of us imagine, but all in all, he is an enjoyable character. Then there's the very dishonorable Fink, who I believe is a play on Patches from the Soul series. My main point is that the story is pretty decent, but the real highlight in that area is the characters. A lot of them are likable, they're well written, the dialogue is enjoyable, and as far as I know, all of it, besides our main character, is fully voice acted. I would like to at least touch on some other people's criticisms and give my thoughts. Some of the common ones I see are input lag, clunky combat, lack of responsiveness in combat, and they really tend to be revolved around combat. For the input lag, I never once experienced that. Could be due to playing the Afterlife version, I would guess. The lack of responsiveness, I agree that it might feel better in combat if our character got knocked back or something when he gets hit. It would also feel better to feel some sort of collision when hitting enemies. But overall, the responsiveness feels good enough, especially with spells and weapons abilities. While you could argue the combat feels a bit stiff, I'm pretty sure that was kind of the intention. It's definitely not a fast-paced hack-and-slash game, it's much slower and deliberate. So I do disagree that it's clunky. The focus on combat over exploration never bothered me either, but it would be nice if there was more to it. But I like the combat, so I do enjoy the combat focus. Overall, I think the game is pretty great, and I would recommend it to anyone who likes pixel art, Dark Souls, Metroidvanias, or anything in between. It's $20, or even cheaper if it's on sale, and there's a lot of content to enjoy. A lot of reviews are positive. It has 4 out of 5 stars on PlayStation, and very positive ratings on Steam, but a lot of forums seem to really rag on the game, so it really depends on where you look. I appreciate you watching the video. If you enjoyed it, liking the video helps out a lot. If you have any thoughts, I would love to hear from you in the comments. If you want to see more from me, subscribe. I post once every other week on Sunday, so I'll never clog up your feed. I hope you have a good one. Peace out.